I have some information, Tony, that is probably going to surprise or shock your audience because you primarily are speaking to a group that has been inundated with eat this, not that.
Overwhelmed.
With no questions asked, just don't eat it, don't do it. But there is an answer, and I want to share this. Everything in the Bible has a cause and effect, and I'd like to unpack some of that and make people feel a little bit more at ease or sure-footed about how to feed themselves and their family.
Welcome to the Experience Miracles podcast, where we help parents find hope, answers, and drug-free help to overcome your child's chronic health challenges. I'm your host, Dr. Tony Ebel, and I'll be sharing my experiences as both a dad and a doctor on every episode. I can take the latest science and neurology of healing and break it down in the most simple and relatable way possible. We'll take on the toughest topics and answer your biggest questions through interviews with other amazing parents and leading experts, leaving you with practical action steps that you can take to help your child heal and thrive. It's time to expect and experience miracles. Let's get started. All right, you guys, we brought him on again to blow your minds and transform your entire family's lives. This interview today is with Jordan Rubin, who has authored so many incredible books about natural health, nutrition, and just unbelievable levels of health and healing. And as of today, the same day we're releasing this next interview with Jordan, his book, along with another one of our best friends and world changers, Dr. Josh Axe, their new book, The Biblio Diet, is out today. And you can get in the show notes, you can get a free chapter, but you can get access to that book. And let's just come out slinging and swinging with the truth that was shared on today's interview that you got to listen all the way through. Grains are good, dairy's good, and red meat rocks. Now, how about that? Especially for the community that we are blessed to serve, which has gone to great lengths in all of this very advanced, functional, integrated biomedical world of gluten's the devil, dairy's the devil. There's no way. But let's just go right to real life. Isn't it our neurosensory, stuck on overdrive kiddos who are just craving these certain foods the most? What if there's more to the story? What if there's more to the science? What if it's like everything we actually teach on this podcast? It's the rule, if you will, of the content and the resources and the experts we bring forth. What if everything we're talking about that generates unbelievable, miracle, dare we say, levels of healing has been hidden in plain sight this whole time? What if it's right there front and center, a whole lot more simple, therefore a whole lot more profound and powerful than anybody else has ever seen, thought, or gone after? That's how Jordan teaches us this. You are going to really, I know it's probably an overused term, you're having your mind blown, but that's this one. So I'm not really going to give you too much of Jordan's bio. The first time we interviewed him, we got all fancy and told you about all of his books and all of his accolades. But the new book, The Biblio Diet, is here. And the movement that he's on, that Josh is on, and I'll say it point blank with this one, that we are on with them. We know that the number one thing that stresses you out is this whole massive life of restricted diets for your children and for your family. This constant state of overwhelm, stress, and anxiety. We can't eat this, we can't have that, we can't do this, we can't eat this, we can't live here, we can't be exposed to that, we can't get this Airbnb, we can't go to this hotel, we can't go to this restaurant. We have been sold this bill of goods that health somehow comes from this massive amounts of restriction and complication. And that's hard, to put it lightly. Your families are just living in this state of overwhelm and difficulty and fear and anxiety about food and about diet and about gut health. And it's time to get you to the other side of that. It's time to get you to the Biblio Diet. It's time to get you to the long-standing, taught to us by the greatest expert in all the world, by God, that says, here's the foods, here's the form they need to be in. Very important part of this conversation, because the foods are going to be like, holy cow, is this controversial? We're going to talk about eating grains. We're going to talk about eating dairy for our kiddos who are neurodivergent, neurosensory, neurospectrum. Yes, we are. And we're going to talk about, through the world's leading expert, Jordan Rubin, that the form, and we're going to talk about where to get access to them, where your family can find these resources of these healing biblical foods that match perfectly, incredibly to our neurobiology, because guess who designed that? God. And on this podcast, we know exactly how the nervous system sets up, controls, and modulates the digestive system, the immune system, the inflammatory cascade. So the answers today come together. Nervous system regulation paired with the Biblio Diet and these incredible, designed and given to us by God foods in their proper form. Get ready for some incredible, transformative experience, miracles, level of healing. Lock in, load in, get ready for, he's funny, he's wildly experienced, and he's just such a joy to have on this podcast. He's our number one expert and source in this nutrition, diet, supplementation world. Everybody, welcome again, Jordan Rubin, to the Experience Miracles podcast. All right, Experience Miracles tribe, parents, moms, dads. We know a lot of other providers listening too, but we're coming for your heart on this one. We get to, God is good. We get to have round two of a conversation. And honestly, in the mix of this is going to be celebration too, because Mr. Jordan, I was going to call you Sir Jordan Rubin. Have you ever been knighted there?
Not in a country that I can speak publicly about.
Perfect. Well, even better. I'm going to need that story when we're done recording. So Jordan Rubin is here, you guys. You got his bio here before we kicked on the interview and got after it. But I just need to tell you, I'm so fired up for this one because he has always been a man on a mission, and God has just taken his experiences, his story, his brilliant brain and his big heart, and just moved mountains. So many of us have so much more access to really important things that get our kids healthier. And he's not done. Today, as you're listening to this, if you catch it on release day, it's also release day of his new book with another brother of ours, Dr. Josh Axe, called The Biblio Diet. And Jordan, I'm fired up to talk about that, but I actually want to go back to what you were just sharing. When I'd love to know really, truly deep down the sole purpose, the calling that God, I was there in the room in Nashville where you were sort of kind of letting out the idea of this book and creating this movement. You knew the direction it was going. You knew the two, and I know there's more, but kind of two lead things that would come alive with this. Can you just share from a personal standpoint, why get this essential book, these concepts, this conversation into the world? Where was the spark?
I'm going to answer it two ways. The cliche is the subtitle that the Biblio Diet's aim is to help people live long, master metabolism, reduce pain, fight depression, and conquer cancer with healing secrets from the Bible. So I guess I could also say this, that I have a dream that people would be out there in the world asking others, why do you look so good? Why do you feel so good? Or somebody says, gosh, I'm always in pain. And someone else says, I used to be in pain, but now I'm not. What did you do? I'm following the Biblio Diet. What's the Biblio Diet? It's God's plan for living. So, Tony, I would say the spark for the Biblio Diet started, I want to say 12 to 14 years ago. I was asked to write the foreword for a book on fitness and health from a very well-respected pastor. And as I read the manuscript, I knew that I was going to have a little bit of a confrontational moment because this pastor wrote about certain dietary approaches, including the Paleo diet, which so many people are on, which for those who don't know, that's a diet based on hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years of human evolution, which I don't believe in, nor does the Bible teach. And I said to this pastor, the Paleo diet has some good tenets. Eat more protein, if they go back to this hunter-gatherer, caveman or Unga Bunga type, if you know the Flintstones lifestyle. And I said, you know what? I would recommend removing that because I would love to hear people not say that I'm on the Paleo diet, but I'm on the Biblio diet. And I said that just verbatim, almost like I'm going to say something that kind of rhymes with Paleo, but sounds like Bible. And what's cool about the Biblio diet, these 12 or 14 years later, it essentially will teach people how to eat and live by the book. Now, so everybody knows, if you're a Bible believer, you hear Biblio diet and think this is biblical, but the word biblio or biblia just means book. The Bible was not referred to as the Bible thousands of years ago. There was the Tanakh, which is the Old Testament, and there's the Brit Chadashah, which is the Hebrew way to describe the New Testament. Pentateuch talks about the Torah. There's all these different words, Greek, Hebrew, Aramaic. But the Bible was called the Bible because people refer to it as the book. So if you believe the Bible is the book, then the Biblio diet is going to teach you how to eat and live. It's going to fly in the face of modern science. It's going to fly in the face of modern, air quotes, wisdom. And it's going to introduce fresh revelation from a book that was written thousands of years ago. And you might ask, how do you get fresh revelation from an ancient book? I don't know, but I'm a big believer, Tony, the more that I go on in life, that certain things are hidden in plain sight and they are revealed for such a time as this, to quote the book of Esther. So that's what we're going to talk about. And I have some information, Tony, that is probably going to surprise or shock your audience, because you primarily are speaking to a group that has been inundated with eat this, not that.
Overwhelmed.
With no questions asked, just don't eat it, don't do it. But there is an answer, and I want to share this. Everything in the Bible has a cause and effect, and I'd like to unpack some of that and make people feel a little bit more at ease or sure-footed about how to feed themselves and their family God's way, because I believe if you honor God with something physical or behavioral or practical, there's a double blessing, because God knows you are doing this by faith in Him, not faith in the latest health influencer.
Yeah, this is amazing. This is the most multifaceted, congruent conversation we could ever have on this podcast. So our audience, I love you guys and listening in. I just couldn't wait to get to this conversation. I could not wait to get to this Tuesday where this book comes out, because I mean it with every single fiber of my being. There's just never been a book, a diet, and it's so beyond the diet. There's never been principles that are more congruent. So a couple of things there, Jordan. First off, a fun one. My audience, our PX tribe, if they ever see a presentation from me, I've literally told them this. I was like, my favorite part's actually in the subtitle. If you want to know why I'm actually teaching this to you and what you're really going to get out of it, check the subtitle. The gold is there. So that caught my eye. That was cute. And then, and I totally get it. Two, we're blessed to serve in this way where when we go through and we talk about the nervous system and we talk about the perfect storm and we talk about, you have to repair and restore the foundation before you even have a prayer that all these fancy, advanced, scientifically developed, Facebook group looking awesome interventions are going to help. They're not going to do anything if the foundation isn't built upon the rock. That is biological, that is neurological, and that is biblical. And so that's where you guys take us, is you know that all of us, especially this audience, we have gone all the way to the far side of complexity, and we don't know if we're ever going to make it back. Every parent on here has had every oat test, food sensitivity, stool mapping, hair analysis, and basically, I'm going to do it in my Tony way. They've basically been told by these experts, right? The most scientifically advanced people, well, your child will be fine as long as they never breathe air, don't eat, you can't eat a single food, you can't go outside. I always joke, probably, and we know, I was at this incredible conference and I was in the room learning, right? While all these other amazing nutrition experts, science experts, it's the way of this conference. All these folks are there to reveal the latest cutting edge research. Brother man, I sat in that room and I felt the overwhelm right next to every one of those parents. I thought about my own 4 kids, and I'm a well-educated doctor. And I thought, I can't and I'm not a defeatist either. I'm not a limit, but I'm like, there's no way. Like, that's just not going to happen in my kids' health. And I look to the left, buddy, and I look to the right, and I could see these parents want to get excited about, this latest diet and microbiome and gut health thing they were learning, and how bad dairy is and how bad gluten is. And it was negative, man. It was overwhelming. It was disconcerting. And every parent left the back of that room not excited to go home and help their child heal. They left that room really defeated. Like, I don't know how I'm going to be able to get this done. And now I feel even worse with the information at hand instead of even better. So let's keep this conversation going, because what I love about this is, and that's how God's teaching really is. It's not meant to be fancy. It's meant to be practical, right? It's meant to be real life. And day to day, we can do these things in this way. So let me ask this though too. And maybe this is a good infusion into this. The other thing our parents face on the regular, they face these diagnoses from conventional doctors, as you have, which said, this is the only option you have. You are going to get sicker unless you, in your world, the cancer world, chemotherapy, in the depression world, unless you medicate it. So I'd love to, throughout the course of our conversation, to just go ahead and be able to use our faith and use what we know to fly in the face of that as well. And because I think when you face those grave diagnoses, you automatically think it's going to take something super complex, super new, super modern, to create the healing. And what we're going to say is, actually, the answers are as old as time. They're as foundational as it gets. That's where the real secret sauce in healing is, even in the toughest of diagnoses and conditions.
I agree fully. And I want people to know right off the bat, because we're being a little mysterious. I do believe that you and your family would be smart to consume red meat. I believe you would be smart to consume bread. Yes, bread. I believe you can benefit from dairy. I believe that salt is important. And I believe that there are certain fruits, vegetables, and fats that are critical for your health. Now, some of what I said is a little less controversial. Some is more. But if you look at the lens of the Bible, history, and science, the diet that healed me first from Crohn's disease and helped bring about my healing from a terminal cancer diagnosis later is the same dietary principles that can help transform you or your children if you understand that when it comes to diet, we need to first eat what God created for food. And number two, eat food in a form that is healthy for the body. What I mean by that is there is a definition that God has of food, and we often don't heed it. We break it. We listen to man as a result. And then we can take a food. I'll use an apple as an example. Now, an apple is clearly a food, but arguably the Honeycrisp apples that I like, they're organic, but they have a thin skin. They're super sweet. They have very few seeds. And if you take that apple, maybe it's not an organic apple, you peel it, you press it, you make juice out of it, you concentrate it, you reconstitute it, and you've got something that is called natural apple juice, but it really is 32 grams of quote unquote natural sugars from a crop that's been sprayed with pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, and it's a sugar bomb. Yeah. Now, flashback to an apple, not just in biblical times, but one my grandmother would have eaten in Poland. She would have picked an apple off the tree that today would be considered like a Russian crab apple, or a common apple, which has a thick skin, is very tart, and has lots of seeds. So I believe we can take a food that God created and ruin it. A great example is bread. And I learned this years ago, Tony, and I'm sure this is not going to surprise anyone on your show. If you are eating white bread or bread made with even unbleached flour that's been restored, or it's been, I would say, infused with synthetic chemicals that people call enriching, then you should think about this. The whiter the bread, the sooner you're dead. I remember hearing that years ago, never left me. You could leave white bread out in nature, as long as it doesn't get wet, it will sit there and look the same for decades because of the preservatives and dough conditioners. It's not food.
Wonder
However,
bread. Everybody pictures.
Yes,
Everybody
it's a great brand.
Everybody blue and yellow dots.
Exactly.
Wonder Bread. Yeah.
It's like Wonder Bread and Spam are the poster children for two of the worst things you can eat. So, however, Jesus was referred to himself as the bread of life. Bread was used as a synonym for food, a synonym for meat, and a synonym for fruit. In fact, 2 of the 7 feasts of the Lord are centered around the wheat and the barley harvest. That would be the Feast of First Fruits, which Jesus essentially is the first fruits of the dead. And then later, Shavuot, or the Feast of Weeks, or Pentecost, also is a feast, I believe, of barley. So what is the deal with grains? Because you've been told not to eat them. Here's another reason why the Biblio Diet is so timely. Tony, I was walking on my farm in Tennessee, and I remember talking about the Biblio Diet with my farm director, Todd, and I said, Todd, I've been listening to the Bible on audio, which I have for years and years, versus reading. It's just the way that I learn. I consume so much of it. It's great. I said, I remember that there's an exact recipe for what Solomon ate every day. So I immediately got online and I said, Solomon daily diet. And in 1 Kings 4, chapter 22, verse 22 and 23, 1 Kings 4, verse 22 and 23, it says, and Solomon's daily provisions were. Now here's setting this scene up. King Solomon was known as the wisest man on the face of the earth. The Bible says all the kings of the earth visited Solomon and listened to his wisdom. Solomon knew everything about animals, plants, and humans, and he was the wealthiest man in the world, and he lived in a time of peace when he reigned. So if you think about that, if you have all the money in the world, all the wisdom in the world about science and the human body, understanding God's word, and you have a lot of time on your hands because it's peacetime, I think what you choose to eat would be the best food on the planet. And guess what? It goes on to say Solomon ate grass-fed cattle. Perfect, right? We're all talking about grass-fed beef. Stall-fed cattle. We're going to ruffle some feathers. Does that mean that they were fed grain or hay? Likely, they were fed something because they were stall-fed cattle. We're going to then go in, speaking of ruffling feathers, to choice fowl. That would be chicken and turkey.
There you go.
Deer and roebuck for all you hunters. And flour and meal, which were made into bread. So get this. The wisest meal on earth is meat and bread. So, Tony, we live in an environment today where some people say that meat is amazing and other people say meat will kill you. Some people say plants and a plant-based diet is amazing. There are now people of the carnivore persuasion that says plants are trying to kill you. And almost everybody says grains are bad, especially if they contain gluten. What gives?
Right.
How could Jesus be the bread of life? How could Solomon eat bread every day? How can the high priests for 7 days of their anointing, their initiation, eat meat, bread, and a little bit of olive oil? The answer is bread is actually a health food if you consume it in its right form. And I know people are going to say, well, yeah, that's expensive. That's difficult to find. Not really. We, thank God, live in a day and age where people celebrate healthy foods and recipes. Yes. And I'm here to tell you that if you find a sourdough heirloom whole grain bread, I choose einkorn, spelled E-I-N-K-O-R-N. Yes, it has gluten, but it's got less gluten. It's unhybridized. When people go to Europe and they eat the grains there, they almost always say, I can eat all the pasta I want, but in the U.S., it makes me sick. When you have a properly fermented or sourdough loaf, which is more like what you'd eat in the Bible, I believe it can be a health food. And there's a reason, folks, why your kids are craving grains and bread and going bananas in order to get it, and you feel guilty because you don't want to admit to your doctor that they really sneaked some bread or some cereal, or you're buying, get this, inferior gluten-free bread, which is not made out of real food. So I'm here to tell you that you don't need to eat bread every day, or your child doesn't. But if you find a true sourdough that you can make or you can order, I know you jump through more hoops than buying bread at a health food store. You can feed your child and your family bread. They have shown in studies that properly made sourdough bread, even from wheat, can be consumed by celiac disease diagnosed patients because the gluten is virtually gone in a proper sourdough bread. But Tony, just like anything, don't go to your grocery and buy white sourdough bread that probably didn't even go through the process and has 50 ingredients. Seek out healthy bread. My family enjoys einkorn sourdough bread. I just bought it and tried another sourdough bread from a flour called kamut. Sometimes we use spelt sourdough bread, which is available nationwide at Whole Foods and Sprouts. If your child demands, and I know you're going to say, well, our child shouldn't demand anything, then you don't have a neurodivergent child. If your child doesn't demand anything, whether verbally or non. Introduce whole grain sourdough bread in small amounts, and I think it can actually boost your microbiome.
Sure does.
But I'll also tell you, consuming traditionally, I'll say conventionally made bread with added gluten, with glyphosate sprayed on it and all the other crap is absolutely going to drive your kid bananas. But a healthy whole grain sourdough might actually make them feel more normal and might help you feel like you've got a little more control in this diet, and you don't have to send your child to school with coconut water wraps and try to find the latest tapioca and potato starch bread that tastes like garbage.
You know, there's so, well, actually, no, my brain was going to say, oh, there's so much there. And that's the opposite of what we want to say with this. It's just right there, hidden in plain sight this whole time. These are the foods. This is the form. These are the foods. This is the form. And so what happened is the world industrialized, and we always mistakenly think that more science, more innovation, more tech, more enrichment, fill in the, find 50 other words that are super synonymous to enrichment, and it just, we got sold this bill of goods over the last couple of generations that the more we can infuse science into our health and our food supply and everything else, we'll get more health. And we just have to take the simplest view and say it's done the exact opposite. Now, what happens is happening while we try and make our way out of this chronic disease epidemic, because we've been foundationally sold this better health through more science mentality. We seek out alternative scientific views. Let me leave the conventional medical world and go to the functional medical world. Well, the word medicine came with us, and this scientific concept of thinking came with us. And so we tend to kind of leave one form and think we're going into another form, but it's about the same. You could have that conversation with different health foods are so overly, enriched to get there that they're anything but. And then also same with supplements and those things. That's a conversation we'll have down the road next time you're on. But here's what I want to say too. There's something else that our audience will understand, but if you don't have it yet, it really needs to be a ride along with exactly what Jordan and the Biblio Diet are teaching us about bread, meat, dairy in its ideal form. There's one more place I want to take the word form, and we'll call it a very close cousin of the word form, is function. What we also know is that God designed the development of our bodies and our biology to go in a very specific sequence and with a very specific foundation. And that's the function of our nervous system. The other thing that not enough people have talked about is the reason that the wheats and the glutens and the dairies and the different meats have come in and wreaked havoc on people's guts is not only were they not coming in the right form, they were going into the most dysfunctional, dysregulated neurogut, neuroimmune system. So we got to match forms. We want to make sure that the nutrition coming in is in its absolute ideal designed by God form. And then we want to make sure that our bodies and our nervous systems are functioning in that ideal form and in that ideal way. And if you want the master code, 2 keys that are really 1 key to restore health, no matter the condition, no matter the diagnosis, no matter how many things you've tried, our true promise to you is let's go back to the basics. Let's go from an inside out concept, from an above down, as God taught us, and say, hey, what form are these foods coming in? Is that the problem? And then what function is our child's nervous system, our own nervous system, operating at? And if it's completely dysregulated, dysfunctional, it's not going to have a good time with anything. It'll have a whole lot better time with the einkorn made sourdough and getting foods in that form. But we can really win the healing battle if we take this internal approach, nervous system repair and regulation, and then we take this Biblio Diet approach, which says we don't have to get so limited, so overwhelmed, and just battle our kids every single. I am so tired, Jordan. I'm so heartbroken watching parents feel, it's like they're being gaslit that if they fail their child Tuesday afternoon because they went to a cross country meet and the parents who were in charge of snack that day handed out Cheez-Its, 6 months of $25,000 of testing and work just goes down the toilet. Like, that might sound dramatic, but if you're a parent listening, you're like, yeah, that's me. I am so freaked out at all times of, I can't let my child do any of this. Well, there's a path forward that is just more effective, more applicable. And I'm just so excited for you guys to get this work out into the world, because I don't know that anything timing wise, Jordan, I don't know that anything has been more needed than it is in this moment right now. I watch my own feed and all these experts and all these influencers. I just continue to think one thing: holy cow, that's complicated. Holy cow, and again, I love hard work. I'm ready for it. But I just look at it myself and I go, oh, way too much, way too much. Like, who's really going to be able to live life that way when our kids are, and then you said it earlier. Yeah. When your kids are neurosensory and neurodivergent, you got a whole nother, cookbook you need to deploy in that world. So,
absolutely.
Okay. So you got to roll that conversation about the grain and the sour. What about dairy? Let's do it.
This is important. I want everyone to know, Tony, because you mentioned gut mapping. So I was diagnosed with Crohn's colitis in 1995. And over a 2-year battle, I had what some would call one of the worst cases that doctors had ever seen. And after visiting 69 medical experts and trying every diet known to man, from carnivore to vegan to food combining to macrobiotic, I got well in part on a diet where I ate bread, consumed copious amounts of dairy, ate red meat, drank juices, and lived in a motorhome. But that's for another story.
Copious? You said the word
copious. To the point, Tony, where I would go to a health food store in California with my little cooler and a 1968 Chevrolet bunkhouse RV with no generator. And if I couldn't get my raw cream or my kefir or my cottage cheese, I felt like I wasn't going to get better the next day, because I knew it was working. And I consumed lots of dairy, lots of meat. I consumed the same type of sourdough bread I'm describing with the worst gut. I had avoided dairy. I had avoided meat. I had avoided bread. But I'm here to tell you that dairy can be very healthy. And just like bread, it's an if. Here is the perfect dairy product. And we'll go down from there because we want to meet everyone where they're at. The perfect dairy product that I could design would be something called A2 dairy. Because if you haven't heard, dairy from cow's milk in America has a protein called beta-casein A1, which forms beta-casomorphine 7, which sounds exactly like it is. It's an opiate, an opioid stimulator, and it could be 13 times worse than gluten because there are 2 receptor sites in the gut, an opioid receptor site for gluten, and there's 26 for A1 beta-casein. But guess what? Sheep milk, goat milk, water buffalo milk, and certain types of cow's milk outside of the U.S., and thank God now inside the U.S., are A1 free, labeled as A2. And we should have known this because mother's milk is A2.
Sure is.
Every other animal that I could find has A2 dairy except for U.S. bred cattle. Why did it happen, Tony? I don't know, but it's the reason why people from Africa, India, and the Middle East come to the U.S. and can't drink the milk. So, folks, if you can find an A2 dairy that is either from A2 cow's milk and labeled as such, or from sheep or goat or water buffalo, if you get it from a sheep or goat or water buffalo, it's already naturally homogenized. It's always white, which means the carotenoids are metabolized by the animal. Now I'm getting geeky, but I said perfect, so let's talk perfect. And ideally, you want it fermented, either in a cheese, a real cheese, or a yogurt or a kefir. Some people now say kefir. I'm not going to go out of my way after 30 some years of calling it kefir. However you want to pronounce it, you can pronounce it. But this type of dairy can provide good fats for the brain, nourishment for the body and bones. And my family has been consuming raw dairy that is A2, grass-fed, organic, and often fermented or cultured every day. I have been every day since 1996 with the worst gut anyone had seen. And Tony, when I'm done here on your program, I'm going to have a delicious meal. And I just think it's going to include some whole grain sourdough bread and some A2 raw cottage cheese. Now, you might say, where do I find this? There are websites like realmilk.com. If you go to your local health food store, say, hey, who's the goat lady around here? Where do I find raw milk? Tony, almost every farmer's market, I know where you're at, in Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan, Iowa, there are raw dairies that show up at local farmers markets. There is also in Tennessee. Everywhere I've lived, there's the local raw dairy guy or gal, sometimes illegal to sell, but never illegal to buy. And this is another food that your kids are likely craving. You might be thinking, my kids would go crazy in a good way if they could eat some cheese. Well, go to the store. You don't have to do all the raw A2. Get Manchego from Costco, Tony. There's never been a time where it's easier to eat this way. When I wrote the Maker's Diet in 2003, I would tell people you got to order from this place through the mail to get your yogurt, and you have to go to this one health food store in the entire state or this illegal co-op.
Yes, sir.
Now you can get A2 dairy at Costco.
Yeah.
You can get it at Walmart.
I got to sneak this in. It's just real life. And the Experience Miracles podcast has a very intentional, strategic form to it at all times. And it's even when we have the tough conversations, we are like, we're going to simplify it, number one, which makes it way less tough to apply. Number two, we're going to put it absolutely in this forward. It doesn't matter what we learned, thought, knew, or were told from here. Today, forward is where healing happens. This is a forward focused podcast. That's just how God made us. This is the time. And then the other thing is just the excitement around the opportunity. Like, I couldn't wait to bring the Experience Miracles podcast because I just looked around the world and we had figured out all these nervous system protocols. We had figured out one, how to communicate it to the world, how to make sure it makes sense to you. And it says, hey, this has been the hidden in plain sight. We call it the moonwalking bear. It's this fun YouTube video, right? Where these guys are throwing a basketball around and they're distracting. And a guy in a bear suit literally does a moonwalk right in the middle of the video and nobody sees it. And he was there the whole time. And then they slow it down, point him out. That's what we're doing when we talk about subluxation, the perfect storm, and nervous system. That's what we're doing when we're talking about the Biblio Diet and the grains and the dairy. We're just coming back to the moonwalking bear, which has been there the whole time. And my theme that I really want to bring alive with this one too is, guys, there's never been a better time to get our families healthy. Absolutely. never been a time we've needed it more, because the perfect storm is real and the chronic disease epidemic is real. But that's why God is saying, Jordan, Tony, Josh, Mom, Dad, everyone, build these guys. Jordan Rubin's on Instagram nowadays. This is so important. And so here's what I want to say. It's easier than ever before and still also requires effort, but it's the most worth it effort ever. Second, do you want to know why it's blowing up? Why is pediatric chiropractic and nervous system focused chiropractic like in demand? Why did I was going to say have to, Jordan, but I think I'm supposed to say get to fly all over the world to Australia and come back and certify. Anyways, because it's working. It's working. What I want to sneak in here, Jordan. So I am blessed. The first 5 to 10 years of my practice, I think you'll love this story, to transfer to today and the real life benefits of raw dairy, sourdough, and red flippin' meat, and then some fruits and smoothies, and you're living life, man. Let me paint this picture, everyone. My first 5 to 10 years of practice, I was blessed to be on the cutting edge. We've been in the same circles for a long time. So I would sit in these seminars and I started to learn about all this that we're actually sharing today. And I got real nervous, buddy. I was like, if I tell my patients this, which how would I not? How would I learn a truth and not share it? The Bible taught me too, don't do that, and how would I learn a truth and not share it? But if I tell them, where are they going to get it? I used to literally practice almost in stress, Jordan, about nutrition. Cause I was like, if I let this out, I'm going to stress them out, because where are they going to go get this dairy? Where are they going to go get this bread? And so it was almost kind of this, like, how do I do this? That's gone. Now I know in my area, like, oh my goodness, we interviewed Joe from Wanda Farms and, we have all these access to it. So I just want to reiterate this for everyone. The reason that you're seeing it blow up at the farmer's market, the reason you're seeing nervous system focused chiropractic blow up is because it's working and word's getting out. And when I look at my patients, Jordan, and we've not talked about this, but it just the conversation today, I always think about the people I serve first and foremost. And, the families who eat the Biblio Diet, they're just so calm. I don't know how else to describe them other than, buddy, man, they're kids, they're babies. I can think of them, many of them that have sensory kids and spectrum kids and anxiety kids and Asperger's kids, and many of the moms and dads who have battled anxiety and chronic gut issues themselves. And when I look at where they are today, one, getting nervous system focused care and their nervous system is regulated, and I know their HRV is in the green. And two, they get raw dairy. They eat a lot of fermented foods. They have sourdough as a main staple and grass-fed, clean red meat as a staple. If I contrast them against the rest of the world, they're just so calm, buddy. They're just so happy. They're just so wholesome. They're just so at ease. I don't see them stressing about the diet they eat. I'm going to leave you with this. I see them enjoying life, like a whole lot of joy in these kids and these families who eat this way. And I really like experiencing a whole lot of joy, myself, for my family, and a whole lot of energy and a whole lot of calm. And if there's something that the world needs right now, it's just more calm, more ease, more joy, more simplicity. And I just couldn't be more thankful to you and Josh for bringing this to us at a time that just, I can't describe how much it's needed. So, all right, kind of rounding third base here. You and I love baseball. We both know that Kirby Puckett is the greatest baseball player that ever lived. No arguments. We don't have time. Okay. I see your nervous system is disagreeing with me there, buddy.
No, he was one of my favorites growing up. He doesn't get enough.
That's right.
He doesn't get enough kudos, so that's good. I forgot we even talked about that, but yeah, he's for that round. He's like the Charles Barkley of baseball. Like it doesn't make sense. He shouldn't be fast. He shouldn't hit home runs. He shouldn't be able to catch that ball in center field. But I agree with you. Yeah,
he's just Tom Brady.
He was just awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. I love you, my man, and I know you guys are rocking and rolling. You're releasing this thing today. So what I need you to tell our audience point blank is, where do they go to get this book? I know you got a free chapter ready to rock and roll for them. Like, let's get to that before we close it down, because I can't wait to get this in the hands of everyone.
Absolutely. Before I do, I want to say this, because everybody is probably listening and thinking, well, I already know about sourdough. I've heard about A2 dairy. eat grass-fed meat, here's a couple of points that I want you to remember. Number one, I believe that every body, that's a young body, that's a more experienced body, will experience miracles by following the principles of the Biblio Diet. I really believe God guarantees it. And the free chapter that Tony's referring to, chapter 14 on healing leaves, is going to introduce you to the only food or type of food, in this case, it may be a beverage, that is in the Old Testament and the New Testament, and that the Bible refers to as healing, medicine, and or a cure. And God revealed it to me in 2019. It is amazing. And as Tony mentioned, that chapter, whether you buy the book or not, can be yours free by visiting thebibliodiet.com. Thebibliodiet.com. You'll see Healing Leaves, chapter 14. You can download it right now. You can get the book on Amazon, barnesandnoble.com, Christian book distributors, anywhere books are sold. We're so excited about this. But I do want to mention, if you are following a quote-unquote ancestral diet or a paleo diet, I need to tell you that one area you might want to correct is eliminating pork and shellfish, what God calls detestable animal things. This ruffles the feathers and disappoints my carnivore friends, my paleo dieting friends, my keto friends. You can have beef bacon.
You sure can.
You can have plenty of other fish in the sea. But I believe a hidden issue with your child is found in the heavy metal toxicity, bacteria-laden or parasite-laden pork and shellfish. And you might say, but Jordan, why does the world celebrate pork and shellfish? The Bible specifically says that what God calls truth, the world calls detestable. Think about it. Marriage between one man and a woman is now being considered archaic, old school, and obsolete. Disciplining your child is considered wrong. Following God's plan and not using foul language or not cursing your friends and neighbors. And I mean, the list goes on and on. Of course, the world's going to celebrate what God calls filth. They do it all the time. It's why more people are downloading and paying into the pornography industry and the trafficking industry than any of us want to admit, because evil is called good and good is called evil. You're not going to go to hell if you eat pork or shellfish. But like somebody once said, you'll get to heaven, but you'll get there a lot sooner. And even if you don't believe me, even if you think theology says differently, give it a try. See what happens when you eliminate pork and shellfish and crustaceans of all kinds from your child or your diet. Give it some time. I learned about this, Tony, from a book called God's Key to Health and Happiness that I read 30 some years ago. A pastor was diagnosed with stomach cancer and he was dying. He was reading the Bible. He had it open and he said, God, I have served you my whole life. Why am I dying? And God said to him, because you haven't followed my word. Imagine that. And he looked in the Bible, found Leviticus 11, Deuteronomy 14, stopped eating pork and shellfish, was cured. This is according to his book. Elmer Josephson is the author. And he went on to share with people why the anatomy and the physiology of a pig and of a shrimp and of a scallop is made as a garbage can by God, not as food. It's why God said to Noah, take 7 pairs of every clean animal and 1 pair of every detestable, because he needed them to clean up the trash. The same word God uses for pork and shellfish, he uses for human excrement. I know I'm on a little bit of a tallow-based soapbox here, but I want to tell you that these are a mere fraction of the nuggets of truth that Josh Axe and I simply illuminate in the Biblio Diet. And I'll make a guarantee. You might be the most educated health enthusiast ever. You will find something in the Biblio Diet that will help your body, mind, and spirit be better tomorrow than you are today. You will have aha moments. And my greatest joy would be for you to experience a health miracle and do it in the name of God, because just by using the term the Biblio Diet, in a way, you are telling your friend, your family, your neighbor that you are following God's plan.
Amen. It is the most, everybody listening, thank you for always being a part of this incredible Experience Miracles tribe and community. If there's ever a good tribe to go all the way in with, it's one that's built on not just the belief that miracles are true, but the action that God calls us to go forth and experience them. That's this community. That's this tribe. That's what you're listening in on. That's what you're a part of when you go see our PX doctors. That's the brick and mortar, location of this living. And you know what this is? You know what I kept feeling, and now the word came to me here in the closing of our conversation today, Jordan, as I was reading your book, because you were blessed to give me an early access to it, and lots of plane rides over the last week or two gave me the perfect amount of time to go through it. It is very entirely soulful. It felt, it is, it didn't feel, it was, and is. It was just exactly what my soul needed for nourishment. It was, it's almost like reading the words, very much began the healing process because of everything we talked about here today, where I didn't feel, even me as a health guy and a doctor guy and all that, but most importantly as a dad guy, I just didn't feel overwhelmed anymore. I didn't feel like it was so complicated that I didn't even want to get started. I just felt this sense of peace, this sense of understanding. Boy, if that's not biblical, I don't know what is, and this sense of wholesome and joy. And it's so cool because, the one family I'm thinking of when I shared my story a second ago about the families who really eat this way, one of my favorite ones, you could probably argue it's my favorite one, are Dr. Allie and Dr. Jonah. They're two of our great docs, and their baby girl, Goldie, who my wife and I like to, say is our niece, not by relation, but by how God put our lives together. They are opening their practice in Fort Collins, Colorado here next month. And you know what it's called, buddy? Soulful Chiropractic. Because, they live this way. They are this way. They eat this way. And you are our most trusted advisor. You and Josh, my friend, are just, I don't know how to say thank you enough. I love that you very much, as we've joked in other conversations, I love that you have not left us alone over here. You haven't left me alone. You haven't left the PX Docs tribe alone, the Experience Miracles tribe alone. You knew that this conversation needed, God knew, through you and me, that this conversation needed to get on this podcast and to our audience. So to say thank you is an understatement, Jordan. And I really love you guys. I really think the world of you. I really love God for bringing us all together. And I really love everybody who's sharing, being a part of this podcast. You want to help us change the world? Share this episode. Share the link to the Biblio Diet. Go there and buy a couple of copies and just give it out at your mom group, give it out at your church group, give it out to your youth group, get it into the hands of our high schoolers and our college students. Let's go. Let our kids know this is what God has called us to do. So Jordan, can we have you back again in a couple of months? We've got, we didn't even say a single thing about the other project you and I are working on, but it's coming. It's awesome. And it's going to be impactful. So how about wintertime? We queue up Riverside once again, and we get into these amazing life-transforming conversations one more time. You ready to come back in a couple of months?
Let's do it. I was just having a conversation, Tony, about this amazing breakthrough for attention, focus, and nourishment specifically for kids. And so we've been working hard on that, and we are going to deliver that information to the Experience Miracles and PX Docs community. I am so passionate about not only the children breaking free from their bondage, but setting the parents free from the constant worry, the constant rejection, condemnation. It's absolutely awful. And as someone who has adopted 5 children, I have 1 biological as well. Every one of my adopted kids had some type of neurological, emotional, or spiritual challenge. And I'm passionate to see some very simple steps on that path to healing. And we started today with the Biblio Diet. So thank you so much, Tony and team. I really believe that the synergy that God is doing between us is like the loaves and the fish. You know what? It didn't take thousands to feed thousands. It took 2 and 5. And that's the multiplication we're going to see. So I pray this episode goes around the world and people are set free and they can rest easy that God's got this and he is the ultimate source for how to eat and how to live the Biblio way.
God bless you, brother. All right, everybody. We'll see you on the next one.